All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We are streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network, also on 21stCenturyWire.com. We're also streaming out live on X, YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Facebook Live, and a few other audio streams as well that we're working on. But thank you for joining us for this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program. This is episode 535 of the Sunday Wire, so it's great to have you with us. We've got a few of our team members here at ACR is going to join us in a moment, and in the final segment of Overdrive, we'll also hopefully be joined by Basil Valentine, our roving correspondent for culture and sport, for some commentary on other stories. But we're going to start off this week's discussion with the big news. Of course, the Munich Security Conference broke ground this week. This is sort of the Davos of defense, if you will. Very interesting event. And also, I want to point people to a great breakdown on this and the analysis of it we did with a space on X last night. One of our guests on this program today, Adam Clark, aka Ruckus, joined me to co-host this space. Incredibly informative. We managed to go for unbelievably, the time flew, 4 hours and 55 minutes. But it was a great discussion. We had Simon Dixon, who's an incredible advocate for Bitcoin. He came on to give financial analysis. We had a few other great guests that popped in, including Ryan Dawson, who came on for the final hour. And we kind of just went through pretty much everything. So this was very well attended. As you can see, 24,000 have already tuned in. So it was pretty good space on Saturday evening. We try to do that weekly, although not every week, but we try our best. So you can catch us there as well on X. That's in my feed. Just scroll down at 21 Wire and you'll see that epic space there. Trump, JD Vance. JD Vance's Munich zinger and Europe's demise. And boy, did we break it all down. I want to bring on to the stage right now Adam Clark, aka Ruckus, and Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, joining us right now on the live link. Gentlemen, great to have you with us.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Great to be here.
So the big reveal in Europe as things in Ukraine are being sort of organized by the new incoming Trump administration, and JD Vance's speech as the vice president. That was the big anticipated one. We'll go through. I've got some clips earmarked for that, but we also had a bunch of other stuff happening on the side. So, like how they were billing this is, and we'll put that back up on screen. The Davos of defense. That's how they sort of bill it in Europe. As you can see, Zelensky's front and center there in the marketing. This is an aerial shot here. I think that was a photo from 2024, but they led with that in all of their sort of communications. So it's all about Zelensky. So you can see that Europe is pretty lost in terms of like their purpose in the world. It's just all about Ukraine and Zelensky and being against Russia. That's pretty much it. This is how we're billing the Munich Security Conference this year. We're calling it the Love Boat Baltic Cruising. You can see the new Secretary General there, Mark Rutte, having a right jolly with the man in the little green suit, Vladimir Zelensky, the pint-sized dictator. He's front and center, fresh off a false flag, you guys. I don't know if you caught this or not, but the day before Munich Security Conference, as if by magic, a drone attack against the Chernobyl reactor. Dormant reactor, but one of the sarcophagus is this containing the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine. And there was an attack, and Zelensky comes up to the podium. Putin has done it again. Nuclear terrorism. He is desperate to keep this war going. Give me more cash. Give me more weapons. It's the second year in a row he's done this, where there's been a magical event the night before Munich, and then Zelensky comes up there puffing his chest out, Slava Ukraini style, begging for support. What do you think, guys? Do you think the Russians tried to sabotage these epic peace negotiations on the eve of Munich? Would the Russians do that? And why aren't more people calling this out? I have my suspicions, but did you guys manage to catch that?
Yeah. What's the deal with that? And what was it last time? Wasn't it a nuclear facility last time they were flying drones at?
They did, but that was in Zaporozhye. But last year it was at Children's Hospital that was hit
Yeah, okay.
by probably an errant anti-aircraft missile fired by Ukraine. So, but Zelensky came to the conference, made a big appeal on that, and there he is, giving it all that. And that's kind of the shtick, folks. It hasn't changed much. He sort of wants it to keep going. Nobody else does. Well, Europe is trying to, but they can't really do. Aren't they in a funny position, the Europeans, guys?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. I'm going to play the Vance speech in a minute, but go ahead and jump in.
Well, I mean, the American people aren't interested in it. It's kind of funny to see, them trying to raise the dog and pony show, the pomp and circumstance again, when American interest in the conflict has completely faded. I mean, even I don't even see people on the left cheerleading for it anymore. So, what is the goal here? Is the goal here to just move the majority of the funding for this to European countries, or like, what are we really working on here?
I like your background, Hesher. You've got Captain America. You've got the Shiba Inu Doge mascot, Robert F. Kennedy, and Corella DeVille in the lower, lower, your lower left there. Very nice. A very nice piece of illustration. Oh,
Ruckus
just
had that one up for our last boiler room there. It's a great image.
yeah, I like that a lot. So, Ruckus, what are your thoughts on the goings on at Munich?
Oh, well, I wanted to comment about that was quite the attack that Russia enacted there on the nuclear Chernobyl, was it? Of course, Chernobyl. Nothing bad ever happens at Chernobyl. I'm confused, Patrick. Did I miss the news? Is Russia suffering for weaponry? Why are they resorting to a single drone trying to strike Chernobyl? That's a good sign, isn't it? Maybe Ukraine's winning the war after all. Just kidding. Obviously, I think that was an attempted false flag. I don't know what was going on there. It could have just been like anything. It could have been like maybe a macaque monkey, and they could have said it was a drone. Oh, no, wait, that was Sri Lanka. They took out their entire power grid. That was fun. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. It's almost like here in America, we feel like we're ready to move on because Trump is back in power and he's ready to seal the deal and make it happen and make the war end. And I think Zelensky's a little afraid of that happening. He recently came out, Zelensky that is, and did well, you noticed that on a couple recent appearances, he's not wearing his green shirt anymore, so that was weird. But he did an interview with somebody, I forget who it was, but he was talking about all of the rich resources and minerals and all of the fun stuff that Ukraine has to offer. And that's the real reason now. We're not fighting for democracy. We're fighting to protect all of these minerals and resources and lithium and plutonium or titanium, whatever it is. We can't let Putin get that, because if he did, he's going to build a drone and attack a nuclear plant, clearly.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, the worst part about this false flag was that there's no reaction from the United States. I mean, that's really embarrassing. Like the world media led with that. Some of the European people sort of bought it, but even some of the European leaders, they didn't mention it that much. Zelensky did, though, and I think this is just really tragic to watch this thing unfold. I mean, it's just such a clown show. But we got the little clip here. This was an interesting one. We'll kind of start with Lindsey Graham made his presence known, of course, had to be there. So and there's nothing important to do in America, so you got to be at Munich to be grandstanding and helping his little friend there. They have quite a amorous relationship, these two. It's a strange relationship. I think the word sugar daddy does come to mind a little bit. Biden is gone, so Zelensky is looking for a new silver daddy, and I think he's probably found one in Lindsey Graham here. And this is a clip, and this is it's good to see Going Underground, by the way, back on X. Their account was deleted under Elon Musk's new free speech regime, and they had to fight like hell, and there was massive amount of uproar to reinstate going underground. That's Afshin Ratanzi's X account for the show. And like, he's a fantastic, well-known veteran, award-winning journalist, of course. So let's just nuke his account. That's what Elon did. There's no explanation for it, but we're glad to see it back. And so here is Lindsey Graham. I'll play this clip, guys, and this kind of like gives the whole game away. It's not the first time we've heard him say this, but it really just kind of, puts an exclamation mark on the whole diabolical agenda of the proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. Listen to this.
I want to tell you and your people, you're the ally I've been hoping for all my life. Not one American has died defending Ukraine. You've taken our weapons and you've kicked their ass. And I'm very proud to have you as our ally. I want to tell you.
So I don't know where to start, guys. There's just a short clip, but it's very professional and statesman of Lindsey Graham. You took our weapons and we kicked their ass. You kicked their ass. Whose ass did Ukraine kick? Are they winning? And he said we didn't cost us one American life. So what he's saying there is our American blood is too precious to spill over this issue of Russia. But we're happy for you to basically go through, 500,000 or 600,000 of your men for our Western liberal vanity. Essentially, what he's saying there. I mean, is this the most? It's so patronizing. It's almost like we're watching a geopolitical episode of Black Mirror here. Gentlemen, weigh in if you.
But this is not a proxy war at all. So this is right.
Right. So unbelievable.
Yeah.
The gumption.
He's admitting it's a proxy war, first of all, in no uncertain terms. And he's also smearing he's smearing the names of American soldiers who have died there. That's a lie. He's lying about that. Here's a name, Stephen Zabolinsky. When was this posted? This is back in 22. So this is old. Became the latest American citizen confirmed killed in Ukraine war. I could go on. There are other names. So he's lying about the fact that no Americans have spilled their blood there. I'm sure there's some American families of veterans who might have been upset to hear that.
Yeah, unbelievable. And it doesn't end there. And just everybody's still fawning over Zelensky. It was good that the U.S., besides Graham anyway, that's expected. He is the ultimate silver daddy for what we are calling, and I hate to be cruel and unusual, but like, what is Zelensky other than NATO's rent boy? Because this is kind of like how it's ended up. And here's Mark Rutte again. They're just slopping over him for photo ops, but he's on his way out. He's not popular in his own country. He will flee Ukraine. He will flee either by train, by private jet, or on foot. He will flee the country in the end. It'll be an exit. But he's still trying to suck and pull as much money and military support as he possibly can before there's a negotiated settlement. And I'm thinking to myself, how many Ukrainian men are going to die during this negotiation process? Because what if this drags on for a couple of months? And that's like 20,000, 30,000 men, 40,000 men. Like, where does it end? And do any of these people in Europe have any sort of moral ambiguity or doubts, or do they have any conscience about the policies that they're insisting on and what the actual ramifications of that is going to be in Ukraine? I mean, this is so immoral, the whole atmosphere and the whole discussion over Ukraine, and they just can't decouple themselves from it. And everyone's tying themselves in knots, trying to justify after the fact everything that's happened. And we know it's absolutely the worst possible fraud, probably the biggest military disaster in history, right? In modern times. Like, this is the biggest fraud ever perpetrated and a whole country has just been thrown under the bus. I mean, it's one thing what the U.S. did to Iraq, shock and awe, bombed it, destroyed it. Libya, shock and all, bombed it, chopped it into 3 pieces, doesn't exist anymore. But Ukraine was different. They convinced themselves and the world and Ukraine they needed to fight this war against an unwinnable war on behalf of the West. And they disguised it as this is for the Ukrainians. They're so brave and they're so feisty. And we're going to give them everything that they want as long as they want to keep on fighting. And so then we're seeing videos of Ukraine recruiters like kidnapping people off the street.
Recruiters.
Yeah, recruiters. So they don't really want to fight. And this guy's not having elections because he knows he's going to lose. And that's what we're backing. I mean, this is like on the level of morality, there is no sort. The bar doesn't get any lower than this. And I look at all these people at these events, just, oh yes, Zelensky, he's champion of democracy. He's fighting the good fight.
Democracy. Yeah. Okay. I'm curious. Why is it there's so much footage available of this conflict? We could say the same about Gaza, but we'll set that aside for a second. Why is there so much footage available? All these GoPros, you search around Telegram and a few other places, repost to TikTok. There is so much footage of what this war looks like, what the combat looks like, what the conscription looks like. We don't see any of that. We don't see any of the mass graves. I've seen mass graves hundreds of times on Telegram. So, there's that. And then there's also the fact that I don't know that we have ever seen in our mainstream media any discussions with Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian families of soldiers who have been killed in combat. We don't see any of that. You would think if this was a popular war, we would have footage of the war being shown, analysis of certain battles, and discussions with proud families who are okay with the sacrifice that they've given. We don't see any of that. Like the only sort of piece of context that the American public has, that the entire West has, is politicians talking to Zelensky and Zelensky talking to politicians. That's it. That is it. Like, it would be very easy to prove that this is a winnable war if they really want to push that talking point. It would be really easy to prove that democracy is actually a function that is being preserved here. But they don't have any of that. There's, as far as I can tell, there's no evidence that there's any of that, any national pride in losing their veterans, any sort of humane drafting happening. Rather it's kidnappings and forced conscription, dying in meat grinders, trench warfare, being exploded by consumer grade drones. These are the sort of things that are going on, and we see none of that. We see absolutely none of that. So, and frankly, the American people aren't interested in seeing it. I don't think on either end. They might be interested if it was, if there was evidence to support the narrative, if you will, but they just don't seem to have that. All they have is the comedian, the clown.
Ruckus, we had Anna from Ukraine on the space last night, and she had a lot to say about this. She said that he's not popular at all. Like more than half the country hate him, but it's so repressive in Ukraine. They've got such control over the media, and they've got these neo-Nazi thugs running around, and everyone's afraid to kind of speak out. I mean, it's a terrible atmosphere if you think about it. You're in a dead-end war. You can't win, but you can't really speak out about it for fear of being called a traitor and have neo-Nazi thugs beat you in the street. I mean, that's kind of where Ukraine is at right now. But the scales are going to quickly fall from people's eyes what the U.S. has to do, Russia, is they've got to pull the plug. Like they can't. Trump still hasn't kind of gone all in yet. He said, well, we're going to keep the aid going, but I'm going to take the rare earths. That's his latest brainchild this week. They don't have any oil, so we can't take the oil. We'll take the rare earths. And it's kind of screwed up because that wasn't in the deal of the financial aid from Biden for the last 3 years. So if there's a future proxy war, then what country would want to kind of do business with America? And that's why we're having a special this week on flags. Get 50% off your new Taiwan proxy war flag when you trade it in for your old used Ukraine proxy war profile flag. So get your profiles switched, folks. We'll be moving on to Taiwan or some other sort of conflict somewhere, possibly a war with Iran. We'll talk about that with you guys as well. But like, who would want to do business with the U.S. after this? I mean, yes, Trump's doing the right thing. He's inherited this dead-end war. He's winding it down. But this kind of like the way this is going, it's not going to be good for any future partnership with the U.S., with any of these types of countries. What do you think?
At least he's asking for something in return, because I was thinking, what is the ROI on all of this funding, the return on our investment, as it were? Lindsey Graham seems happy that it's just, we're just killing Russians and we're keeping Putin at bay. Little does he know, I mean, because I know how much of a fan he is about going after Iran. Correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the money, aid, resources, weaponry that we send over to Ukraine is that exact amount less that we're sending to Israel, for instance. So, I don't know how Bibi feels about all this, but the return on the investment, at least Trump is expecting that, okay, listen, we've invested whatever it was, X amount of billions of dollars. We want at least 3 times as much of that back in the form of rare earth minerals. So again, at least he's asking for something in return for the sacrifices that Zelensky's men have done by using our weapons and our money. It's crazy to me. And that Taiwan flag's not going to work on social media, not like the blue and the yellow flag did.
Yeah, that's a little more complicated. I don't like, they're gonna have to change their flag. Someone needs to get in touch with them and change make it a little more sort of marketable. The ROI on Ukraine, Biden told us what the ROI was, Ruckus. What are you talking about? It's about defending Western values. That's the ROI. It's preserving Western values and then preventing Putin from marching all the way to the English Channel. That's the ROI. That, according to Joe Biden and NATO and Jan Stoltenberg and all these guys. So, like, freedom and democracy is the ROI, Ruckus. What are you talking about?
And as Americans, we only care about what's happening out there in Europe. It's all we think about every day when we wake up, from morning, noon to night. I mean, in between the job thing and the family and the stress and our own problems, domestic issues. But we're always fretting, wondering about, oh my God, is today the day that Putin marches to the English Channel? We can't let that happen, America. Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
Be honest, Ruckus. Having that Ukrainian flag adorning your profile on Facebook really made you feel good, didn't it? For those first 2 years.
I never had one.
I know you.
I wouldn't do it.
I'm talking rhetorically. I know you did. I know you didn't. But seeing that Ukrainian flag, and if you're in a small town in Texas, and you see the town hall is flying the Ukrainian flag with the American flag, which many of them did. It happened here in the UK. Every little village and hamlet had a Ukraine. Our buses are painted gold and blue with "Donate to Ukraine" on the side. Double-decker buses still running around the UK. I think I shared them. I probably have to, pull those up again. I saw one the other day. I'm just like, when are they going to decommission these things? So, I mean, it's like, it's that feel good. It really gave us a purpose that we were somehow part of something bigger. And isn't that priceless? I mean, that's so intangible that Western values, preserving. Zelensky is preserving all that is good about the West. He is the front line. He is the final backstop for our freedoms. What are you guys talking about? You're so cynical. Why aren't you supporting this little man?
Couple of things. First of all, was it in 2022 or 2023? I can't quite remember, but I believe it was the Pentagon or somewhere in the DoD. They admitted that about 70%, because it's not all buckets of cash we're sending over. Let's not forget a lot of this, monetary value, much like aid going to Israel, is in weapons. So, back then, I forget if it was 22 or 23, the DoD admitted that 70% of that stuff, quote, disappears into a black hole after we send it out. Okay, so that was a pretty big warning shot, a pretty big admission by the United States government right there. And now we've got another similar story to that. Zelensky saying, something similar recently. So basically, we have no idea how much fraud, waste, and perhaps even international arms smuggling criminality is associated with this. So if we are truly, doging right now, if we're doging for things, there's some inefficiency going on here, to put it, blandly, with regards to the money and weapons that are going there. So, there's that whole factor. Are we being expedient here? And then, with regard to the idea of democracy, we were talking about this on Boiler Room the other night, and there's an article up at Big League Politics by Shane Trejo that we were talking about. The headline is President Trump cuts off funding for the National Endowment for Democracy, and the NED. Here's a quote from the article: a steady stream of NED grants to myriad Ukrainian political entities and movements advanced both the Orange Revolution and the Maidan Revolution that paved the way for the current Ukraine-Russia war. And an analyst from the Libertarian Institute by the name of Jim Bovard was speaking about this exact concept, the democracy concept. And back in 2009, in an article he wrote for Future of Freedom Foundation, he noted that NED is, quote, based on the notion that its meddling in foreign elections is automatically pro-democracy because the U.S. government is the incarnation of democracy. NED has always operated on the principle that what's good for the U.S. government is good for democracy. And I like the way that he's put that, because that is the only definition of, supporting democracy abroad that makes sense. Because this, if you're using, you would think you could use the definition of the term democracy to analyze that talking point, but you can't, because democracy is not being defended. You've got a dictator there. He has no electoral mandate to be sitting in the seat that he's in right now. He has shut down political parties. He has jailed, tortured, and killed journalists. We could go on about the undemocratic practices there to include everything that NED was funding that led to this situation. So the fact that this administration has shut down NED and still going to these security conferences and kind of big upping, Ukraine's capability in this war leaves a big fat question mark for a lot of people, I think.
Oh, indeed it does. Indeed it does. NED and National Democratic Institute, that's another one of those. Michael McFaul came up, I think the Gray Zone or somebody had retweeted this. It's on my feed, but he got a second salary in there. He's making like $1 million a year. He's got a lifetime job, academic job, and he's glory festooning on X about how much everybody loves him. And he's one of the architects of the coup in Maidan. So these people are responsible for untold death and destruction. These deep state people on all these payrolls, USAID funded, U.S. government, State Department funded, shameless. But so anyway, this is interesting. I believe in reincarnation. So Jan Stoltenberg leaves as Secretary General, And we've got Mark Rutte from Holland, and this Dutch clown, who is really a comedian. He is just as much a spaz as Jan Stoltenberg. You remember Stoltenberg with the hands, like he's Norwegian, but he talks like he's Italian. So this is Rutte here, and these people are so, I don't know, just anodyne and banal. They're absolute Eurocrats, and they're still sitting here trying to make a case while the walls are falling down. The whole thing is collapsing. They're still trying to make a case that they're going to stand for democracy and freedom in Ukraine. So Christiane Amanpour, who I don't have any time for, she's the queen of warmongering, but she's herself is being forced as a CNN big interviewer or whatnot. She's being forced to kind of, conform to reality a little bit over Gaza, and of course on this as well. Here's Mark Rutte, this is just such a funny interview. Notice her jacket, you guys. Notice her jacket, and not to get distracted, but it's almost like Zelensky's a stylist is also doing her wardrobe as well. Look at this. Hold on.
Americans have said it's only the Europeans who they intend to police or whatever, security guarantee any deal. Does that mean you face just Europeans? Is it NATO? What is it? When you think about that, who goes in to patrol any line of contact?
But here's the thing. My worry is that we are now already negotiating with Putin without having Putin yet at the table.
Fine, but that's what the Americans have done. I'm sorry, the defense secretary.
I'm not sure they're doing
that. He
that.
said that no American boots on the ground. He said only Europe, and that's what he said.
I think the agreement is this, that whatever the outcome of those talks will be, that Putin should never ever again to try to capture 1 square kilometer, or to say it in American terms, 1 square mile of Ukraine. That is vital. We cannot have a Minsk III. This was the agreement struck after they kept Crimea, after they were able to capture Crimea in 2014, 2015. We can never have that again. So it has to be doable. We all agree on this. And then you and I can brainstorm whatever those security guarantees should be, what it exactly should look like.
These guys make me laugh so hard. And Pete Hegseth used the same talking point out front of NATO headquarters or whatever. I don't know where it was. It was at Munich. No, out front of Munich. He said, we can't have another Minsk 3.0. So this is clearly a talking point that's been circulated. Listen, Minsk was the best deal that Ukraine could have ever got, and it was on the table for 8 years. 8 years. They were never going to get Crimea back, but they would have kept the whole East and avoided a war. So it wasn't like Minsk was a bad deal, and it was a UN Security Council resolution, unanimous. All the U.S. and all the Europeans signed on to it, and they slow-walked it. They slow-walked it intentionally, and that's admitted by Angela Merkel. It's admitted by Francois Hollande, who was a French president at the time. It's admitted by Petro Poroshenko twice, and it's admitted by Zelensky. So they sabotaged the Minsk Accords to have the war. They chose to have the war, but it's the gaslighting is this was Putin's war of choice. How many times have you guys heard that? It's Russia's war of aggression, Putin's unprovoked war of choice. Unprovoked war of choice. So you can see there's a whole script here. This whole conflict is based on a facade of propaganda, that there were plenty of off-ramps to avoid a war. And they insisted they needed Russia to intervene on behalf of Donbass, because Donbass was getting shelled and civilians were getting killed by the thousands. And Russia said, that's it. As soon as they started saying Ukraine's going to be in NATO, and Zelensky, in February, Zelensky said, we need nuclear weapons. He said that. And so that's when Russia basically said, okay, we're going in. And these people will stand here like, well, we were just kind of sitting around having tea and everything was perfect. And then Putin came over the ridge with the Russian army. These evil orcs came over into the Shire and just ruined it all, guys. These clowns are something else, honestly.
What is with the like? this is still a persisting talking point that Russia invaded Crimea. I mean, if anything should tell you that global government does not want people sort of having agency and ownership over what their governance is going to be, that is a great example right there. It's like those are Russians that voted in a referendum basically for that to happen. And then like the balls on this guy to bring up Minsk. Are you kidding me? Like who are the, like you just outlined it, but I mean rhetorically, who are the people that were not following the Minsk agreements? Seems to me that was largely Ukraine operating under CIA directive and visits from senators and Congress people and all this stuff. So I mean, I don't know who the Secretary General thinks he's talking to there. It's like these talking points aren't even for citizens unless they're completely brainwashed, and the cadre of brainwashed citizens is getting smaller and smaller and smaller right now. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't get it, but they get it enough to know that they should be very skeptical, and they're probably being propagandized too, which is a vastly different situation than in 2022.
If this guy was a comedian, I would pay money to see him because he is funny. He's genuinely funny. So, but where do they find these people? If you're going to carry on with the NATO charade, might as well have a military guy in charge with the medals. Remember, like Rasmussen, or it just looks better. This civilian, I shop at Macy's look is not cool, and it's not credible at all. So, I mean, it's so long in the tooth. The whole NATO thing, trying to wokeify NATO and then make it gender neutral and make it more kind of, civilian friendly with more women and da 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 da. So it's just too much. So I mean, this Ukraine, I think, is the project that will break NATO. That's how history is going to look back at it. NATO died in Ukraine. NATO died in Ukraine. Ironic, isn't it?
And didn't Trump want to kind of get us out of NATO? Hasn't he been floating this idea again recently? I mean, I know it's okay, everybody. I mean, this doesn't mean anything because Donald Trump can pick up the phone and end the war in 24 hours. I don't know why he's waiting, but that was what he promised us. Remember on the campaign trail, he said he was going to end it before he even took office. Actually, if I'm not mistaken,
it's a little more complicated. Trump's finding out. So what's happened is, and that's why Rucca's freaking out because Europe doesn't really have any say, and he himself is like a nobody because the guys like that don't run NATO. The U.S. runs NATO. NATO's run by Washington, and Britain is its sidekick. It's Batman and Robin. That's NATO. Everybody else is like literally an extra from central casting, and they do what they're told. And if the U.S. says you need to spend 5% of your gross national product on defense and buy from us, they're going to do it. And so unless Europe wakes up and says, oh my God, we're being played here. So like what's happening, guys, is the U.S. is saying up your defense spending, which you're going to buy from us, but we're not going to be there in Ukraine. You can send troops in, but no U.S. troops. And you need to defend yourself. So it's like a protection racket, but without the protection. So it's just like brilliant. It's like the Sopranos not even going to bother protecting your shop, basically. So it's
no, they'll just send a box of weapons over. It's like, here's a box of Tommy guns. Good luck, guys.
Yeah, make sure you buy those guns too from us.
How about a box of gravitic drones with unlimited payload capacity? That would be the ultimate solution. Powered by Starlink, of course.
Right. Yes. We'll have to steal that intel from the Chinese because apparently they've got gravitic drones, which they're launching out of Chinese submarines off the coast of New Jersey. I mean, that's what I heard on the Sean Ryan show. So I'm sure that there's, it must be true because he's very well connected, I'm told. Anyway, so let's other goings on here. Proloins are out. at Munich. Here we go. This is Annalena Baerbock's Twitter account. As you can see, these are the lovely ladies. These are strong women of the free world. Hashtag MSC 2025. And she's tagged here Melanie Jolly. That's the other one. I don't know what country she's from. Probably one of the Baltic states, I'm guessing. And then Kaja Kallas, the blonde bombshell from Estonia, who is in charge of foreign policy. I mean, the Russians must be shaking in their boots, guys. I mean, will you be honest? If you had to go up against these three, these are the strong women of the free world, and they will not be deterred in their quest to advance European and Western values. And Putin is not going to intimidate these women, guys. And as you can see, here we go. So Mats Nilsson, friend of the show, by the way, the great Swedish geopolitical analyst and historian, Matt's added his 2 cents to this. Let's see if it's down here at all. Let me see. I'm not sure. Matt's did a great piece of AI art. I don't know. I'll have to go find it. But he did a great sort of addition to this. I'll see if I can locate it. But what do you think about this? Strong women of the free world, guys. It's pretty
looks more like a book club or something like that, or a country club table. I don't think that the mommy blogger class here in the United States and in the larger West would disagree about the strong women here. I don't think the mommy blogger sphere is going ham right now. They love it. They're thriving on TikTok. They're thriving on Instagram, and they're not putting up with any psyops when they see them. So yeah, that's the real strong women right now. So this is sort of, I would say this is like the a straw man of strong women right here. These are basically proxies for warmongers and globalists, and I think pretty much most people realize that.
It almost looks like a stock photo. Like you could use this photo in any setting. Actually, if I was just looking at the picture without knowing who they were or the setting, I would say, what is this, a coven of witches or something? Is this a J.K. Rowling book signing? What is this?
Yeah, Sex and the City, some sort of like Comic-Con for Sex and the City fans, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking more like an episode of Eurotrash, but I mean, that's just
there you go.
A great British show, by the way. And on that note, we're what we're saying here at the Sunday Wire is in the spirit of Eurotrash. We'll just bring up on screen here the great French host that you would know if you're in Britain, but if you're from France, I'm talking about Antoine de Kooning. There he is, Antoine de Kooning. Make Antoine great again. He was the host of Eurotrash, which was a classic comedy show. I think you could probably catch episodes of it on YouTube, but that was a sort of in the Euro kitsch heyday. I'm talking about the late 1990s, before they sort of formalized the common market and things got a little more civilized. But he was the host of this show. He was absolutely brilliant. One of the funniest guys ever. Antoine, we miss you. Please bring back the show. But that's where Europe is at the moment. On the JD Vance front, let's take a look. Now, this is a really interesting speech, guys. And I'll be honest with you. I was expecting something different. I was expecting some geopolitics. I was expecting him as vice president, because vice president is head of the National Security Council in the U.S. pyramid. And so I was kind of expecting Donald Trump's proxy to come and give a very clear foreign policy direction, but we didn't get that. What we got was anti-wokeism mostly. And it's kind of like the beta male battle there. And I feel like Elon Musk influenced this speech or something. It was all that. There was some good stuff in there, and we'll play some of it. We'll come out of the gates with the positive stuff. And then there was some Daily Shooter script in there as well, which was extremely disappointing. But we'll start with the positive stuff. Obviously, he came after the Europeans on censorship, Personally, though, you got to be careful when you criticize Europe not to humiliate them. You can criticize them and say we were part of the problem as well. He sort of tried to do that a little bit, but not good enough, because the last thing you want to do is have Europe trying to undermine America. And this is kind of like where things are headed. They're having an emergency meeting of the European Council to discuss Donald Trump, and this is on Tuesday or Wednesday, and discuss the NATO situation. So I don't know how that's going to go. Could be a nothing burger, could be something, but we'll take a look at Vance here. Let me see if I can bring this up, and I'll bring this up on screen. So this is JD Vance. Now this is the good stuff here. I support everything here, and we'll get you guys comment on this. So let's start off on a positive note, and I'll work our way through the weeds after that. But here's Vance.
Obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Ouch! No one's not many of those guys were clapping. I don't know if you guys picked that up. So there's a very
they had an applause sign. They had to light it up.
Very frosty reaction from the room. So that was interesting. He continues.
Now we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with. Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way, or even worse, win an election. Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger.
There's a lot to unpack there, but just, what did you guys think? I mean, there's another bit where he said, you probably saw this clip, you guys, the danger of Europe is the enemy from within. It's the censorship. It's kind of this authoritarian nature of suppressing speech. He's clearly making a play for populism. So he's basically saying you're suppressing populist upswells from the electorate. You're trying to annul election results. So I like the sound of all that, and this is good. I think he was very strong here. Your guys' thoughts, Hesher?
Yeah, I think that's probably why you're hearing some lackluster applause from the crowd there. They a lot of these people there, I would imagine, are completely dyed in the wool when it comes to sort of yesterday's political mindset, if you will. I don't know if I can actually call it that, but so it's there's definitely some good stuff in there, and it makes me think I wish it was a little bit stronger, like if you watch for example Matt Taibbi speaking in front of Jim Jordan just a couple of days ago. He did a really good job of unpacking what we've been talking about for a long time, which are all these anti-free speech initiatives and laws that we see in in the UK, in Europe, in Australia, in Canada. He really outlined the censorship situation. He did it concisely. He did it in a 5-minute opener. And, I think that what JD Vance is saying there is the right thing. I just wish he would have gone a little bit harder, and because he could have thrown some international intelligence interests under the bus there. I mean, for goodness sake, man, you just closed down, USAID and NED. They're involved in what you're talking about right here. What about the NATO, Atlantic Council Digital Forensics Lab? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain cul-de-sacs and right and left turns that could and should have been taken in that talk there. That could have been a major, something that would have me more excited than I am. It's like, yeah, I agree with everything he said. But there's 1, 2, and 3 steps further. You could have taken that to really send the message. So, of course, I'm not surprised that wasn't, didn't go down that way. But, there's a lot more there. There's a lot of open goals sitting there that you could have kicked, man.
Yeah, and I agree, Hesher, and actually, Thomas Fassi writes for Unheard. He wrote a really good piece on this. We'll talk about that in a moment because it expands a little bit. But Ruckus, what are your initial reactions on Vance?
Well, I think that the jury is still out as to how the censorship battle is going here on the home front. So I would have liked us to wrap that up here first and make an example and show the world, hey, here's how you don't censor your people. But we're still dealing with that. We're making a law about anti-Semitism comments. We just witnessed accounts on X getting nuked, not the least of which was Ye, or Kanye West, of course, for his merchandise thing that he did, which with the little symbol on the shirt, the one, if I'm not mistaken, most of those went to the Azov battalion to help them out with their efforts. But like we don't have the leg to stand on just yet to be reprimanding others about their level of censorship. Let's get that fixed at home first and then show them, hey, look, if we can do it, you can do it too. So I found it very tone deaf that he was leading with this whole censorship thing, but that was my observation.
Yeah. So we'll go back to Vance here, bring him back up again. So now this is the big ticket item here. He talked a little bit about the defense spending. By the way, you guys kind of know how this is going. If the U.S. is pushing, I mean, to go from 2% of GDP to 5% of GDP, that's a huge amount of money. And it's so this is Trump expecting them to settle at 3, right? That's kind of like what it is, or at the very least 2. I think there's a number of NATO member states that don't spend that, but they can't afford it. They're all broke, and they're broke because of this Ukraine war. And they're broke because of have to throw this up on screen because of that. Not a word about this. This didn't get talked about at all. I can't believe what a bunch of cucks. Europe, I mean, they're just pathetic. They just grovel. And nobody wants to. Why doesn't anybody want to talk about Nord Stream? Well, probably because they've all got their dirty little hands in this NATO operation. And so it's hilarious. But by blaming it on the Ukrainians, they've sort of temporarily give themselves a stay of execution on the matter. But I just find that to be hilarious. But so immigration is the big ticket item. And so here's Vance on the immigration issue. I've got some comments. I'm sure you do, as does I think Thomas Fassi as well. But here's this bit.
And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city.
We'll stop there, guys, and just talk about the immigration issue, okay? My take on this is that, and of course, my take is very controversial to some people. Certainly, I'm talking right over the heads, just explicit disclaimer. I am talking right over the heads of Tommy Robinson supporters. You will not get what I'm saying here, but that's okay. Just go to the bar and get a pint and come back in about 5 minutes. Most of the migrant flows into Europe are coming from sub-Saharan Africa, and through Libya, okay, and Sudan. So those are two situations where there was intentional destabilization. Libya, obviously, NATO policy, U.S.-led NATO policy to destroy Libya. That was the sort of safety valve for immigration into Europe, blown basically by NATO. Nobody wants to take responsibility for this. Not the French, who are also there, not the British, who are also riding shotgun, and the Norwegians, who flew a lot of air sorties during the Libya bombing. Other one is Syria. Massive multi-billion-dollar proxy war, U.S.-led, NATO-led. Turkey, NATO member. Okay, don't need to explain anymore. Afghanistan, NATO. So all the Afghan refugees in the last 3 years, floods of them. That's a NATO situation. Uzbekistan and the neighboring stands destabilized. They're flowing in as well. So 3 major inflows of refugees or migrants into Europe from 3 NATO flashpoints. Arguably, the CIA has been destabilizing Sudan for the last 20 years. Okay. And they even split it. They partitioned it. That's how bad it got. So why can't we have a conversation in Europe about, with all these NATO members here at the Munich Security Conference, that lo and behold, is it possible? Is it even possible? Guys, just, I'm dreamscaping here. But is it possible that NATO policy could have some effect on the migrant crisis? Or am I just an absolute crazed conspiracy theorist?
Very possible, and we could argue the same thing here in the United States, right? Like having to flee, parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Like if you're going through Libya and Sudan, that sounds like a pretty dangerous route to me. So very similar, people trying to flee places like Venezuela, or elsewhere in South and Central America to come to the United States. Like, yeah, of course. I mean, it feels very familiar. Yet you're right. There's no discussion about the intentional destabilization of these places, and how that plays into this. It's like, that's apparently verboten to discuss in those circles because it plays a huge role.
Ruckus, you have any comment on this one?
I thought we all agreed this was unprovoked mass migration. So
migration unprovoked by choice.
it's interesting that he said the thing that a lot of us commentators have been saying about other events of recent history, that these things do not start in a vacuum. Why is that concept lost on these people when it comes to other parts of the world? But he's happy to understand how the world really works when he's standing there on stage talking about this particular issue of migration. So at least, again, he's saying all the right things. You mentioned that on the X Space last night, Patrick. I mean, there's really nothing wrong in general with what he's saying. We can all get behind it and agree with it, but I think it's kind of lost on his audience. I had mentioned on the X Space, who is he talking to? Is he really talking to the people in that room, or is he talking to us? I don't, it makes no sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember when you brought this up, it was a great point, Ruckus, because what we were talking about, Hesher, was that whoever wrote this speech for Vance had in mind the viral clips that will come out of it and go on to, X and conservative media, the zingers, basically. That was the title of our space, JD Vance's Zingers. And so that this is how communication and consensus building is done now these days. It's viral sound bites on video that will go on Instagram, TikTok, X, and other social media platforms. And that's what circulates, and it gets embedded in mainstream articles. Fox News uses the same clips as well. They see what the metrics are on some of these zingers, and they're like, oh, that one's got 10 million views. We're going to lead with that one. So it's interesting how new media works with digital media is working with politics, consensus building, talking points. There's some different mechanics these days. And that's what I'm kind of interested in watching this process, because it seemed like the speech didn't have continuity. It was kind of like a wandering speech. It's kind of like 5 different chapters in his speech. And it's almost like he had the sound bites pre-written, baked into the speech. I don't know if you guys.
I think you're right. It makes me think of when Trump did his video conference into the World Economic Forum. It was like, what is this? I feel like this is not for the people in the room. That was my first thought. Was like, wow, this is highly prepared, and it's a lot of this is just I use the metaphor often of stroking the head of the dog, right? Like we're stroking the head of social media here, conservative social media, because it makes great sound bites. All 5 of those chapters can be have the best part pulled out for a 3 to 5 minute clip on whatever YouTube channel, Forbes or whatnot, and they'll go big. So and there's not just a power politics angle to that. There is a raw social media angle. You know what I mean? A metrics driven social media angle that actually brings straight up money into the account holders. So they're able to monetize stuff like that if it's written in a way where the Western audience is going to absorb it in small sound bites and feel good. You know what I mean? And
oh yeah,
there's a lot to feel good about right now. I have to eat my words a little bit about Doge. They're actually doing a lot of things that I completely support. So, it's like, it's really easy to have your head patted, to be that German Shepherd sitting there and I just need a head pat, I need a snacky poo and a head pat and I'm cool, all the while, things are being monetized left and right. We're seeing talking points that, that might, entertain us here at home or satisfy us here at home being used in places that don't make sense, like the World Economic Forum and the Munich Security Council. And that's why you're not going to see them go deep dive on a lot of these things, like I was complaining about before with that first segment of his clip.
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, as in media, we do chop up segments. We pre-weave the bigger segment into for smaller cut ups afterwards. I mean, but we're in media, we're not in politics, so it's like politics and media have converged now completely. And let me just let me see, this bit is interesting, and we're going to go to break after this. And on the other side, we're going to connect Basil Valentine. Is going to be joining us in overtime. But this is an interesting bit, you guys. You'll know where I'm going here.
Guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
Hold on for a minute. Stop.
Don't
it right
NLP me, bro.
Do you see, saying all the right things, you guys? And then so he says, the vice president of the United States saying it's an absolute truth that a coronavirus leapt out of the Wuhan labs and did a few laps around the planet in 14 days. I mean, so like, who's running? Who wrote this speech? Was it Cat Turd? Was it Ian Miles Chong or Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? I mean, so it's a lab leak promotion. So the CIA is running with the lab leak. So what's all this? Oh, we're against the deep state BS, because he's parroting deep state talking points. I mean, I thought that could have just been left out, you guys. But the fact that it was included like that, I have no idea what to say at this point.
I had guessed that AI was involved in helping him write the speech, and I believe that even more firmly today than I did last night on the X Space looking at it. I would like to take the transcript of the speech and feed it into one of these AI programs and ask it, what is the probability that this speech was written by AI? And I think I might be onto something.
So what do you think about that, Hesher? Lab leak, it's the absolute God's honest truth, says JD Vance.
Embarrassing, shameful. I'm so sick of seeing the lab leak being the cherry on top of a statement from a mainstream conservative at this point. You're a feckless know nothing. I'm sorry. Sorry. I mean, maybe you just don't know. Maybe you just don't understand. But even if you haven't taken the time to look into the many shadows of doubt that have been cast on gain of function or lab leaks and this and that, you have no business telling people that it's an obvious fact that happened. It is not an obvious fact. And you can go back and listen to 2.5 years of Sunday Wire, Boiler Room, TNT broadcasts. If you
UK column.
Yeah, UK column. Our friend Alex Zek. I mean, that's really the true omnibus of information on this, the end of COVID.com.
Yep.
So, but I'm not surprised. I'm just sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing blah blah politics, right-wing politics, and lab leak. Boom. Like that's your mic drop. Lab leak is your mic drop. You do realize when you do the lab leak mic drop and cherry on top that you're promoting more of this. You're asking for more pandemic industrial complex. You're asking for more lockdowns. You're asking for more mRNA shots. You're asking for more social distancing or whatever you're basically simping for Bill Gates. Okay. So if you're doing lab gates, you're simping for Bill Gates, you're simping for Pfizer, you're simping for Moderna. You are a whore. You are a whore for sale for big pharma and for global governance and for authoritarianism, pandemic, industrial complex tyranny. That's all there is to it. So, has been and will remain one of my biggest complaints about the politicization of health, especially when it comes to conservatives, because you mainstream conservatives were hiding in your houses like everyone else and allowing people to run roughshod over our country, over our world, hiding. Like where were you? Were you in Jordan Peterson's little heroin den? Were you doing OxyContin with Jordan B. Peterson or something? You just couldn't raise your fucking head out of the clouds and say, wait a minute. No, we have a constitution here. You can't do these things. I don't care if there's an unexplained illness that I don't understand. You know what I mean? None of that. And then when it becomes okay to talk about politically, you want to come out and you want to do Chinese lab leak. You want to do, where were you when we were talking about bio labs all over the planet that were funded with our tax dollars back in 2018, 2017, 2019? Where were you when we were doing Sunday Wire with Ms. Gitanyeva, right? Did you read those reports? Have you been at 21stcenturywire.com reading those reports? No, clearly, no, you don't care. If you,
and it wasn't trendy. It wasn't trendy. It wasn't a popular talking point. So because Facebook suppressed lab leak posts for 2 months, that's like evidence that somehow there was a lab leak. But let me tell you something, and this is the truth, that lab leak, the Wuhan lab leak, is the mainstream CIA-backed conspiracy theory. That is the official conspiracy theory of the U.S. government now. JD Vance just put it right on there and nailed his colors to the mast. If I put out that there was no SARS-CoV-2, no novel virus in Wuhan, there's no evidence for it other than a computer-modeled genomic sequence from the Chinese CDC from one patient in Wuhan, and that was sent to America and to Italy and to the UK, and they used that to calibrate the PCR test for SARS-CoV-2. Never a biological sample produced. If I say that, I get censored. I get my account shut down on YouTube twice. Everybody try it. Sam Bailey, Dr. Sam Bailey's not on YouTube. She is censored. The most censored position on social media is no virus or the skepticism of a novel SARS-CoV-2 virus. Lab leak, you can talk about all you want. So what on earth is all this talk about? So I'm telling you, these people are too much. So, and by the way, just we mentioned Thomas Fassi, great piece here on Unheard. He basically pointed out that on the Romanian elections, the U.S. were the first person to basically throw shade on that election, and that emboldened the Europeans to then annul it. Okay, so it was U.S. first. And on the censorship issue, and Vance slightly alluded to this, but not enough. It was U.S. tech firms and U.S. government and U.S. government-funded quangos that have pressured Europe to censor. Okay, so all of this stuff is coming from the U.S. And I know it's a different administration, but the right thing to do is to say we are responsible for all of these things. This is a new team now. When we repudiate the Biden administration and everything they did, but we're not going to do this going forward. Like, he didn't make that clear enough. Instead, he browbeated the Europeans as if it was all their idea, and it was clearly coming from the U.S. And Thomas Fassi basically has all the receipts in this article, and it's a very, very good piece. And Thomas is a great he's a very fair, even-handed political analyst, and he's a good journalist. So this is a great piece here. But I'm saving the best for last, you guys, okay? I'm saving the best for last. And here's JD Vance. And let me see if I've got yes, I do have the cue right on this. And we're going to go to break after this. So I'll get comment on this, and then we'll go out to break. But listen closely to this.
Migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction?
I can't agree more, you guys. How many times do we have to see this script run? A disheveled Muslim youth known by the security services, a known wolf on the radar, does some crazy act of, quote, domestic terrorism. Okay, how many times do we have to suffer this narrative? Well, just read Trevor Aronson's book, The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terrorism, to know that all of these high-profile domestic terror events have some security services, informants, dupes, patsies, and other useful idiots always involved. That's why they're, quote, on the radar of the security services. So here's JD Vance basically throwing a solid to the Daily Shooter, guys. I don't know what to say.
How many times? I can answer that question. Infinite times. This will happen infinite times because this is how they control humanity. This is how they shape society. False flag after false flag after false flag after stagecraft after statecraft after more false flag. They're going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it because apparently as citizens we cannot seem to come to grips and terms with the fact that we live in a giant MK Ultra factory, a giant closed loop of feedbacks that will consistently rely on these sort of narratives that Trevor Aronson talks about in The Terror Factory and that we've talked about here in real time every time we see one of these. Yeah, we're not saying these things are fake. We're not saying no one died for the noobs out there. We're saying sometimes things happen and governments and security agencies will get in there and tell you that something different happened. And sometimes governments and security agencies and FBIs and CIAs and MI5s and Mossads will make things happen, or they will entrap people into doing things. And then the narrative comes around. And then 70 years later, you're still trying to figure out, well, who killed JFK? Can I have some more documents that are heavily redacted, please, so I can think about this for another 40 years? Can we just keep doing this? You know, we'll tell the people, oh, we live in the modern age. Welcome to the 21st century. We're protecting democracy. We're protecting your health. We're protecting marginalized people. Bullshit, you are. Bullshit. You guys are doing false flags. You're doing statecraft. You're doing stagecraft. You're messing with the financial system. You're doing cultural engineering and then telling us that these things didn't happen in a vacuum. We got solutions for it, but we certainly don't want to talk about the actual problems that led to it. So the answer to your question, JD Vance, is the beating shall persist. Okay, the beating shall persist, and morale will not get any better as long as you allow these security agencies and frauds in these three-letter agencies and the military-industrial complex and your donors to keep writing these silly plots.
I can't agree more. Ruckus, your comments before we go to break.
What exactly is our shared civilization? That was a new one on me. I've never heard anyone use that term before. So that stands out.
He's kind of talking. It was kind of, he said he was doing an anti-Muslim thing without saying Muslims. Basically.
I wasn't going to say it. Well, that's the other thing. It's like it's implied that all of these events that don't happen in a vacuum are somehow tied to an extreme ideology, which almost always, certainly 9 out of 10 times at least, is related to the Muslim thing. So yeah, terror. Which just furthers an agenda, of course. Sorry.
It's the clash of civilizations narrative. So like we're still stuck with this after 9/11.
It's us versus them. See,
that's right. It's us versus the terrorists. You're either on our side or you're on the side of the terrorists. Said famously George W. Bush, the great philosopher king. We miss him so much. Anyway, we're going to go. So anyway, I just thought I'd drop that Daily Shooter script on you guys, and I'm really impressed. JD had his marks on that. Perfect. That's a perfect Daily Shooter script. I mean, I'm in awe. I'm absolutely impressed that he. So expect more false flags, guys. That's all I can say. Because if he's eating this up, these dodgy, fake German, unbelievable stories and all these crazy Christmas market vehicle ramming crowds and all this other crazy stuff. And it's always on the radar of the security. Oh, we knew about them. But the reason we didn't apprehend them because we're just short on man and funding. We need more resources. That'll be the solution. We need to ramp up spending on security. That'll do it. So they need a DHS in Europe. We need a Department of Homeland Security in Europe. So that's what Trump will probably say next. Anyway, we're going to go to Overdrive right now. I'm here with the team from ACR, co-host Bryan McClain, A.K. Hesher, and Ruckus, Adam Clark. We're going to be joined in the Overdrive by none other than Basil Valentine. He's waiting in the bullpen, throwing fastballs like Raleigh fingers, getting warmed up for the Overdrive segment. So look forward to hearing from Basil about a whole host of things. We may talk about the JFK, Epstein 9/11 files, and also Elon Musk's latest love child, conservative values for everybody. I can't wait. A lot to look forward to on the other side. Stay with us, folks. We will be right back after some music from our friends, Red Rumble.
For in the final analysis, we all inhabit this small planet, and we are all mortal.
Lately I've been watching the world gone mad. Brothers and sisters full to take a stand, to hate their fellow man, another man. Divide and conquer is the acronym plan. Distract the people, control the story. Don't believe your lying eyes, you know me. Stay in power, no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Corruption and lies. Truth is the crime, will turn to good. Well-designed misery to keep you on edge, make you believe anything anyone says. Keep it left or right, not top to bottom. Accuse the victim, can't you see we got 'em? Stay in power, no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. With captured rights, feudals like child will turn to dust. Industrialized brutality, commercialized cruelty. People as commodity, cheer on war atrocity. No accountability, perpetual impunity. Always have an enemy, the hell of all humanity. Stay in power, no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Stay in power, cash in the stars.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stcenturywire.com. Thank you for rejoining us. We're also streaming out live on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, X on both of our accounts on X, as well as Facebook Live on our fan page on Facebook. We're just actually starting to get some traction. It seems like Facebook's loosening up their censorship protocols and allowing for normal political speech a little bit, not quite, but it's nothing like it was 10 years ago when there was you could actually do stuff on that platform. But it is interesting. It's changing slightly, so we'll keep an eye on that situation as well. And hopefully we're going to bring onto the stage both Hesher and Ruckus. Also, Basil Valentine is joining us as well from the beautiful levels of Somerset. We'll bring him up onto the stage as well. Gentlemen, let's see. We'll bring Basil on first, actually. Basil and Ruckus, bring you guys up on stage. Great to see you. Mr. Valentine, beautiful day in Somerset, as usual, with the magical tour behind you.
Yeah, nice and cold here. Winter's still very much with us, Patrick. We've still got a month to go till the Cheltenham Festival, and we can genuinely say that spring is here. But wow, what a time. Europe in an absolute tailspin after JD Vance's speech. And I believe that the initial meetings between the United States and their Russian counterparts are beginning tomorrow, which is what has prompted Emmanuel Macron to call this emergency summit in Paris of European leaders, bolstered by the presence of the NATO Secretary General and the Eurocrats, Kaja Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen. Trump is reported today to have said about the initial contact, it will be just me and Putin. We will not invite representatives of Europe. There will be no war for me. And if Europe has a problem with that, then let Russia defeat it on its own without American participation. Why don't I want the EU there? Because their representatives need to go to war. They need a long-term conflict to cover up their incompetence, their lobbies, and their stolen money. I already classify the EU as a third world country, but it is a little better off. No one dictates anything to them. I will not negotiate with anyone who wants to prolong the conflict. I will not negotiate with anyone who will send more weapons. I will not negotiate with anyone who will try to get any more ammunition initiatives. I will not negotiate with anyone who will try to prolong the conflict. I will negotiate the peace, which is obviously a very censored word in the EU. So Trump continuing to double down, and the Europeans are just, they don't know what's hit them. This is a whirlwind. They were expecting a change of tone, but this is a complete 180.
Yes, indeed. So, Basil, there's a little bit of confusion amongst the Trump team. I saw Kellogg's cornflake up there at Munich as well. General Kellogg, I call him Captain Crunch. That's the nickname we're giving him. So he basically is telegraphing that, we're talking about to the Russians about their relationships with North Korea, China, and Iran, and that's part of the Ukraine negotiations. I personally don't believe that. And if it was, why would he be telegraphing that in the media? Because that's obviously going to put the Russians up the wrong way. And is this Trump's strategy, Basil, or is this slight disorganization with all these kind of newbies that don't have any diplomatic experience, let's face it, between them? What do you think?
Well, I mean, they're making it up as they go along, so to speak, but, it's a completely different style of administration, as well as, different tone and different policies. Things are happening so fast. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago that he got into the White House, and, within a few days of Vance's speech, suddenly there are going to be high-level Russian and American delegations meeting, and, that's why Macron has called this emergency conference. So they're moving with enormous speed, which has wrong-footed all the diplomats and the hand-wringers, who, if there was to be a peace conference, maybe we'd have it in 2 months' time or something, or try and change the facts in the ground. continue to bolster Ukraine in the meantime. None of that's happening. It's that he's like, chop, chop, this war's coming to an end, and it's coming to an end very, very soon. And for that, you've got to applaud him.
So what do you guys think? Because we've been watching this conflict now for 3 years, and we've been kind of right about everything as it has been unfolding. The mainstream media, the rhinos, Democrats, Republicans have been wrong about everything. And so we've kind of been listening to the Moscow media a lot, and they've been right about all the stuff that the U.S. is now admitting. So they're kind of behind, aren't they? I mean, to play catch up on this, it's like it's going to take a few months of very meticulous studying to get to the point where you can talk to the Russians across the table, because they're not going to go for the sound bites and the bullshit. They have lost plenty of men and sacrificed tremendous amounts, been sanctioned to high heaven more than any country in history. So like they've already basically been beaten and got up again and have dusted themselves off and are now touting 3% economic growth when Europe is touting 0. So do you think the Trump administration, you guys, is I honestly don't, I'm not hearing enough substantial diplomatic language coming yet. It's almost like they're still trying to find their footing. I would think that they would be. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it does feel that way. Like Ruckus was saying, we were told this is something that could be accomplished basically overnight. And, expectations are high right now because there is a lot going on. You can't even, it's basically impossible for one to even keep up with all the EOs and appearances and everything going on. So people are expecting a lot right now. Expectations are high. And, if you really want this to stop, those would be what Basil outlined would be the things you'd be talking about. So this whole idea of, shifting more money to European countries, them being responsible for more bullets and nerfed Leopard tanks and whatever they want to send them, it basically all just the spigot needs to be shut off at this point.
Ruckus, what do you think? Is this credible negotiations from Trump yet? Have they gotten into anything substantial? How long is this going to drag on?
Well, I have it on good authority, and by that I mean Alex Jones with this breaking news that Trump sat down somewhere in one of his office settings, and he suggested, Trump did, that is, that Trump, as an individual human being, just one man on the planet out of how many billions, would like, what he would like to see is that we cut down our nuclear stockpiles by 50%, and not just America, but also Russia and China. And he said that he would like to see that happen. So Alex Jones ran with that and said it's going to happen. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and praised Trump. And thank God for Elon Musk, because we are the media now. So I don't see any diplomacy. I also don't see any war. What's with these long protracted wars? It is now 2025. Don't you think by now, if we're going to have some sort of conflict going on with all of the advanced technology and weaponry we have, somebody's going to win one of these wars eventually? It shouldn't take 3 years at this point. So clearly it's just part of the forever wars agenda. So I'm not impressed by any of this.
Apparently Trump didn't just say he wants to cut nuclear weapons by 50%, or that he wants China and Russia to follow suit. He wants to cut all Pentagon spending by 50%.
Defense spending.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's been floated. I mean, nobody even floated. The only person talking that kind of language in the run-up to the presidential election is somebody like Jill Stein, of course. So, whether or not it comes to pass, and we should all be rightly skeptical. So, the military-industrial complex and the Raytheons and Lockheed Martins of this world are very, very deeply embedded in Washington. Washington is arguably a war economy these days. The United States really doesn't manufacture very much of anything that it exports, except for weaponry. But as a sentiment, I mean, all right-thinking people should want to see that kind of huge reduction in weaponry that was touted under Khrushchev and Kennedy. And then again, there was a mirage of it with Reagan, Gorbachev. So if Trump is to sort of finally commit himself to that path. It goes along with the whole Doge, we've got to cut the $34 trillion deficit philosophy. But with amongst the executive orders, he sacked all the people looking after United States' nuclear stockpile, apparently. The people who actually sort of make sure that the things don't go off accidentally. He had no idea what they did as a job. So, the pen has been crossing out entire departments for a fortnight.
Delete, as Elon says.
Right.
So cutting 50%. He's saying cut 50% of defense spending, but the week before he said we need to raise defense spending.
That's right.
By 200.
It's the Reagan posture, isn't it? Even that we will achieve disarmament through strength. So build it up in order to scare everybody else into reducing. Well, I mean, that's the theory, but you're right.
Let me tell you, like, would you trust the United States if in a three-way agreement between Russia and China that the U.S. would actually cut spending by 50% of their whole Pentagon, which is 1.2 trillion in real spending after overruns each year, that they would cut that down to 600 billion in the year? Or just show some accounting trick, like Elon will wave a spreadsheet. Look, we've done it. Now China, you cut in half, and Russia, you cut in half. I mean, is the U.S. really trustworthy? I mean, I think they're so delusional to even float such an idea. That would take years to build up that kind of trust, where you'd be in that kind of arms reduction relationship. And Trump thinks he can just it's kind of weird. Like you mentioned, Ruckus mentioned another media outlet, how that some passing comment while Trump is shaving in the morning makes it as the headline. And it kind of reminds me of like a cult where, the Rajneesh Bhagwan or Osho, people would follow him around with a tape recorder in case he said something. And then as soon as he said something, they would distribute it, it's, wow, did you hear what he said this morning? While he was, filing his toenails. So it's kind of like this cult thing with some of the media and Trump, and we're defeating the globalists. And I support all positive actions and policies. I do. But my job is not to be a member of a cheerleading squad. Okay. Our job is not to put on lipstick and hold pom-poms and jump up and down and go rah, rah, rah. Okay. I support all the good stuff, but we have been burned so many times by false heroes, saviors, and fake prophets. Enough that it is our job to hold leadership and politicians accountable for the promises they made to get our vote in the first place. It's as simple as that. Democrat, Republican, or whatever. So I've gotten a lot of heat for not being positive enough about Elon in the last couple of weeks, and I am so tired of it at this point. So, and it's worse. The people, Basil, the people who are the most cultish and pro-Trump and get totally upset if you criticize Trump or Elon are British. The British online MAGA brigade. They're more ensconced in the culture of U.S. politics than the Americans are, and some Europeans as well. It's like Trump is kind of a global president to certain factions.
Yeah, no. At this point, he is. He's absolutely steamrolling everybody in his way. I mean, I'm pleased to see these initiatives vis-a-vis the war in Ukraine, obviously because we all want to see the killing stop, but also because it's completely upended the European bureaucrat oligarchy. And you've got children like Kaja Kallas, the Estonian former prime minister, who's now the high representatives for foreign policy, all running around screaming and exposing what hawks they always have been, and warmongers. So it's great for that, I must admit. At the same time, we've had the repulsive spectacle of Marco Rubio and Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday. Really, really disgraceful scenes as always. So you have to take the rough with the smooth with this lot.
Yeah, on the Rubio front, I'll bring that up shortly, but I'm glad you brought that, because I do want to segue to Rubio and Netanyahu. So what Marco Rubio, it was only a matter of time. People need to understand Rubio's whole career he basically owes it to the Israeli lobby. And that's not like Paul Singer and all the rest of them. It's not a big secret. Everybody knows it. Everyone, anyway, who follows politics knows it. So he's saying that the greatest source of instability is not Israel, but is Iran. And so he's given this zinger of a speech. Let me pull this up, and then
I mean, it might as well have been written by Netanyahu himself. There's no that you can't get a cigarette paper between their positions, you know.
And Netanyahu, we'll bring him up too, because I have to play Bibi's latest. So this is all synchronized, and I'll tell you guys why in a moment. But here's Marco Rubio. That's what he has to say here.
The common theme in all of these challenges is Iran. It is the single greatest source of instability in the region. Behind every terrorist group, behind every act of violence, behind every destabilizing activity, behind everything that threatens peace and stability for the millions of people who call this region home, is Iran. And by Iran, I mean the Ayatollahs. By Iran, I mean its regime. A regime who, by the way, its people don't support. The people of Iran are victims of that regime. And so I think it's important to constantly point that whether we talk about Hamas or we talk about Hezbollah or we talk about violence in the West Bank or we talk about destabilization in Syria or we talk about any of these issues, the militias in Iraq, they all have behind them one common theme: Iran. And that's stressed. And there can never be a nuclear Iran. A nuclear Iran that could then hold itself immune from pressure.
So there it is, guys.
Who knew Iran is behind the violent settlers in the West Bank? He said so there. He referenced the violence in the West Bank. So I guess all those invaders, they're secretly Muslims. They're not actually Jewish at all. How extraordinary.
So they have nothing. Iran has nothing to do with the West Bank. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So what on earth is he, this guy, talking about?
I mean, I must admit, he's such a disappointing choice. I mean, first of all, for the, unbelievably, lowest common denominator, below lowest common denominator level of analysis, but also what a pathetic individual as well, 5'3", 7.5 stone, wet through, weak voice, no gravitas, no nothing. I mean, sorry,
no gravitas. I know he's no Basil Valentine. I'll tell you that right now. He definitely doesn't have the gravitas of our Basil. Towering at 6'3", a formidable rival to Trump himself. Mr. Valentine, who's got a pretty good golf swing as well. I've seen it. I've been there. I've witnessed it. Look, Rubio is. What do you guys think? Where's the multipolarism? So these people drift this stuff out and then they retract it after a week. I am really I'm going to go all out on Rubio. Because
the speech, as I say, might as well have been written by Netanyahu, and the word on the street is that Israel wants to attack Iran and drag the United States into the war, and a speech like that is paving the way for it. Amongst the things the Americans are going to seek to do in Riyadh tomorrow in the negotiations with Russia over Ukraine is try and weaken Russia's ties to China, but also to Iran. Of course, they've become quite pally, and Iran is joining the BRICS. So they want to drive a wedge in there. The Russians, for their part, want to see a lifting of some, at least, of the sanctions.
Okay, so comments on Rubio, Hesher, and Ruckus.
Well, how did he get this job? I think we know the answer to that question. That seems to be pretty obvious. And are we supposed to have forgotten what Vladimir Putin said just a few months ago when he was talking about where the red lines are? And they weren't just in Ukraine, they weren't just to do with Russia, they were to do with blocs and alliances and things like that. So He didn't name any specific countries, but we would be remiss if we didn't think about the fact that Iran might be one of those countries. So, and we're talking about, so it's like on the one side, this administration is telling us, well, we want to cut the DoD budget by half and we want to stop these conflicts, right? And we're going to start conversations with people. But out of the other side of their mouth, they're dispatching Rubio to go out there and use the same old Lindsey Graham and John McCain talking points about Iran with like no concern that, that might actually be, this old, tired, conservative war hawk talking point of propaganda might actually be counterproductive to the overall message that this administration is trying to send. And then you combine that with the whole, daily terror / daily shooter sort of seeds that JD Vance is planting. And for me, all I can do is just say, well, okay, so I guess we're waiting around for more Cybertrucks to explode, more Green Berets to have a mental flip, more, ideologically and ethnically ambiguous people to do, strange things that only the media will be able to tell us about. We'll never have any facts on it, just a bunch of classified, redacted documents that they can, the FBI can hide in a box to pull out 70 years later for some other president when it's like, hey, I'm going to disclose what happened, in the event that led up to our war with Iran or something like that. It's contradictory. It doesn't make sense. And this is an old propaganda, pro-Israel talking point that needs to just be let go from this country if we're truly going to keep stroking the head of mainstream conservatives and America Firsters. It's got to go. It doesn't fit in, although many of those people are late to understanding that themselves. So that's why it's still there, I imagine.
That's why it's important to know where the war on terror came from. Who authored the war on terror policy? It was authored by Benjamin Netanyahu himself in the book he published in the mid-90s. And he went and browbeat our Congress into adopting this policy. And here he is, still leading the charge. Ruckus, your thoughts on Rubio? Are you as sold on Rubio as high on Rubio as Basil Valentine is?
No, I'm much more of a fan of the Lindsey Graham, to be honest with you. But he would say the exact same kind of thing. Of course, he's busy kissing Zelensky's ass right now. Listen, Hesher, you're forgetting the fact that they don't, like, nobody, the government, the media, the traditional media cannot come out and label, like, say, a false flag event and say, oh, look, Iran did it, because nobody's going to believe them. But luckily, they don't have to do that anymore, because now we have X, and we have the former CIA ops and Green Berets running around doing the circuits.
Yes. Yep. Ruckus. That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah. So it's like with the media, and he's not lying. It's just the same old media. It's just been repackaged so that people will trust it, because they learned their lesson by now. They're like, we can't come out and tell the people what we want them to believe, because no one believes our lies anymore, because we keep shooting ourselves in the foot and getting depantsed in front of everyone, and we're the laughing stock now. So they did this misinformation, disinformation thing. They did the censoring thing, and then they gave X to Elon Musk, and then he uncensored people and said, hey, look, we're on your side. You can trust us. So I think we're in a much more dangerous situation now for them to get away with a false flag event. And it's so digitized and so online now, and so deep faked of a world that they don't even have to do a real false flag anymore. They could literally show a picture from a movie, label it Alex Jones or Elon Musk, and Mario goes and posts it, cat turd reposts it, whatever. And it's like, it's a fact. When we got to go to war now, people, they don't even have to declare a war. They can get it to the point where the people are literally demanding on X that we go to war. Elon Musk will make a poll. Should we nuke Iran? Yes, F yes, or hell yes. You know what I mean? So it's a very dangerous situation.
Yeah. Or, should I pay child support to this latest? Oh, wait, no, sorry. We'll get to that in a moment. But speak of the devil, sorry. I mean, literally, Ruckus, I did not tell him to cue that, but that's exactly who is shilling for this war. And this is not our favorite person in the world. And so he's got an agenda, folks. And here he goes. Look who is shilling for war. And Mario, of course, has never seen a war that he doesn't like. And he is happy to shill on behalf of Elon and the military industrial complex here, saying, fantastic, what a great idea. Let's listen to this. I'll give you my comment, and I'll tell you where this is coming from.
Israel and America stand shoulder to shoulder in countering the threat of Iran. We agreed that the Ayatollahs must not have nuclear weapons. And we also agreed that Iran's aggression in the region has to be rolled back. Over the last 16 months, Israel has dealt a mighty blow to Iran's terror axis. Under the strong leadership of President Trump, and with your unflinching support, I have no doubt that we can and will finish the job. Israel and America.
Okay, so what I noticed about this, guys, just my quick 2 cents, and I'll go to you, Basil, first. But what I noticed about this is the report is that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. There's been no intelligence presented to show that they do have nuclear weapons. But so this is happening. And then what I see happening on the same day of Tulsi Gabbard getting sworn in to the U.S. Senate. So note what Netanyahu says here. And this is what goes front page of the Washington Post the same time as Tulsi Gabbard is getting sworn in. We see this. We see this. U.S. intelligence assessment. Israel likely to strike Iran in the coming months. According to a new intelligence assessment, Israel is planning a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear program. Okay, and it will set them back weeks or months. So they're basically saying Israel's going to do this. It's not going to deter the Iranians. They're setting up a talking point here that the U.S. needs to come on board with Israel. And what's missing here, you guys? And we scroll down looking for details. Washington Post report, I've serialized here. There's no evidence or intelligence of an actual nuclear weapons program.
Of course not.
So the leak is that Israel says they're going to strike Iran's nuclear program, but no evidence that Iran has a nuclear program. How fishy is this? Okay, so this brings us to the issue of Tulsi Gabbard. And so Tulsi Gabbard is sworn in. And I'm thinking to myself, why is she given this job? Why is she? And why is on the same day she's sworn in, this story comes out and she has not commented on it? They've just drifted it out. So this is clearly an agenda that's been pre-planned. I personally am skeptical of Tulsi Gabbard's appointment. I think she has been put in by the Israeli lobby to give the green light to Trump to strike Iran. That's what I think, because she did a hard pivot to become pro-war after October 7th. And shed a lot of her supporters for backing. She ended up backing Israel's genocide, okay, as the, quote, anti-war leader. So she's the perfect person to sell a war that might be unpopular with half the country. Just like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the perfect person to sell a vaccine for bird flu or Project Stargate that might be unpopular to half of the country. The establishment are wicked, folks. And this is how they operate. Basil, what do you think about Netanyahu's latest?
Well, I had to mute the computer while he was talking there because if I actually hear his voice, it brings me out in an allergic reaction. But we know what he's saying, and as your story on 21st Century Wire has confirmed, they are planning a strike. Gabbard, well, what's she doing there? Is the idea to try and sort of make American involvement in an attack on Iran look more acceptable? She's still being attacked from the right. Extraordinary when you think that, I would say the right, when you think that 52 Republican senators voted to confirm her as Director of National Intelligence, and 48 Democrats voted against her. It was only a few years ago she was running for the Democratic nomination. Somebody say during the week, actually, the Democrats won the November 2024 election because Trump, Robert Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard are all old-style Democrats. But we'll leave that there for the moment. But maybe she's supposed to put a pretty face on an upcoming war with Iran. But an awful lot of the so-called deep state, article in The Atlantic I've referenced here, still saying she can't be trusted because she went against the Assad gas attack narrative. And of course, you go against any of these false flags and you're a heretic, you know, and also attacking her because she refused to condemn Edward Snowden. Yes, she appears to have become more of an avowed Zionist since October the 7th. That's a prerequisite for getting any senior job in Washington for the time being. You know, we can only hope that wiser heads prevail. I don't think Trump, for all you know, his bluster, I don't think he wants to get drawn into a war with Iran, but the others around him, you know, a bit keener.
No, 100%. And this is a big concern I have, guys. I'm not going to, this is happening way too fast. So we're all watching the bouncing ball in Ukraine. And as that gets wound down, well, God forbid, we cannot have a period in America where there's not a war going on. God forbid. It would just be terrible. Need to start a war with Iran now. And there's Rubio, Secretary of State, shilling for backing up this Baby Ruth bar that's been drifted into the swimming pool this week of a intelligence assessment that Israel's just going to go ahead and do it. They're hitting Iran's nuclear program. Hesher, no evidence of any nuclear program.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but what may happen is that we have another sort of series of limited strikes which do superficial damage to Iran's nuclear program. The Iranians don't retaliate in any major scale, and the whole thing kind of goes away, and Israeli bloodlust is satisfied, at least for a short while. You know, if you ask me to have a bet on what the most likely scenario is, that might be it.
But if Iran retaliates,
we're in a different. But we got very, very close to a major war a few months ago, if you remember.
They will retaliate. If Israel does that, it's certain Iran will retaliate.
Well, true, but then we heard lots of talk before Israel went into Lebanon that Hezbollah was going to retaliate in a major way, that it had all these weapons that could strike deep into the heart of Israel. And, you know, in the end, you know, disappointing to say it, but their response was pretty limited.
Well, Iran pelted Israel twice, once in April and the other in October, and they smashed up a couple of their military bases. They could take Ben Gurion Airport out. That's like the only exit for like most Israelis. They could easily take out that airport. So they could take out, they've taken out a U.S. base in Iraq and under Trump, and Trump didn't respond. So Iran has already given the U.S. a bloody nose. So all I'm saying, guys, is this is extremely dangerous. And Israel seems to be pulling the Trump administration like a dog, like pulling the leash on a dog. And I find it to be highly...
Of course, absolutely. It is extremely dangerous. I concur. But I hope the worst is not going to come to pass.
You know, the other problem is during the Senate hearings, you guys, you pay attention. Tulsi was like, WMDs in Iraq, forever wars. These are great talking points. Who's going to disagree with that? But she didn't say the important bit. Where did that bad intelligence come from? Came from our allies. 2, Israel and Britain. Yellow cake uranium from Britain, Niger uranium, yellow cake, all that business. Joe Wilson, Valerie Plame. That was all a smokescreen to cover up the fact that basically we were fed bad intel because we were wavering on the Iraq war. Britain was there to kick us into touch with some bad intel. Israel stovepiping fake intel into the U.S. So if they stovepipe Iranian threats, like domestic terror threats in America, Tulsi Gabbard is the one that will tell the president in the briefing whether it's a credible threat or not. She's the one. So this is why I'm extremely worried about her close relationship with the Israeli lobby and Fox News, etc., and then her being put in a position where, quite frankly, I would have said I would think she would make a better Secretary of State or a better UN ambassador.
Well, she might get one of those jobs further down the line. You know, hopefully, you know, Trump wasn't averse to moving the deck chairs around in his first administration. I mean, if you look back, someone like Rex Tillerson, his first Secretary of State, you know, absolute model of professionalism and discretion and diplomacy compared to the people that have come since. So, maybe Rubio won't be in the job for very long. I sincerely hope so. But, on the basis that my enemy's enemy is my friend, the dreadful Nikki Haley was very quick to attack Gabbard because she opposed ending the Iran nuclear deal. She opposed sanctions on Iran. So, she's not about it. Haley would have been worse.
But that was then. That was then. Tulsi's different now. Tulsi is Israel to the hilt. Israel to the hilt. And I think that's a very dangerous person to have as DNI while they're floating out this attack on Iran scenario. Hesher and Ruckus, go ahead and weigh in.
Well, I mean, the way Bibi said it, he said he was implying that all of these things are possible now only thanks to Trump. Like as though Israel's success is completely predominant on who's the sitting president. That's a joke to me. So I don't know. You guys are all making excellent points. I can't really add to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, go ahead, Hesher, if you got any thoughts on this.
Aren't there like 20 NATO bases, U.S. and British bases surrounding Iran? Is it not similar to Russia, where they're just, NATO military bases basically completely encircling it? Are we to really believe that there's a nuclear program there and there's no evidence of it with all those assets surrounding that country? And what happens, right? Like, what happens if Israel strikes Iran, or we do it at their behest? You know what I mean? It turns into a very predictable mess for everyone. There's nothing good that can happen from it. And like, if we were to just stop this Iranian propaganda campaign, this campaign against people in the West to believe that Iran is behind everything that's awful everywhere. I mean, would anything bad happen? I mean, I would argue probably not. I don't think anything would change if we just dropped this and went for a more peaceful stance. But what do I know?
Yeah. So, I mean, when she was confirmed, that was a big sort of question mark I had was, what she's untested. She's not an intelligence veteran. She doesn't have a huge sort of career behind her. She's new. She is very clearly she's switched parties. She's on a career path. She wants to belong to, the new MAGA camp. There's a lot of pressure on her. And I always say, is like RFK backpedaled on all his vaccine positions. He said 2 years ago, he tweeted, we don't need a bird flu vaccine for a disease that doesn't exist. And when pressured by his Senate, he said, I won't stand in the way. I'm going to back a bird flu vaccine. So a little bit of pressure and he caved to the big pharma lobby. So with a little bit of pressure, these people are so quick to cave. And it really scares me because when the pressure was on Trump on COVID, he went all full on jihad on warp speed. And he was like, we need to get the vaccines out, forget the testing, forget the regulation. It's all about big pharma and the vaccines. And that turned out to be what? A disaster, didn't it? So we need people in office that aren't going to buckle to political or lobby pressure or the establishment pressure. That's what you need. You need someone who's going to push back because attacking Iran, this has huge implications. And once you start going down that road, where is it going to stop? That's my big concern. So when I see Tulsi, I was not cheering because it's like, to me, that's as ridiculous as cheering for Kamala because she's, the first black female president, just because of her gender and because of her race or whatever. If I was on the left, just like cheering for Tulsi, let's see what you do. I mean, I'm so past this point of being a cheerleader, and this hopium is just too much. If she stops the war, then, great. We're going to have a celebration, and I'm glad to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, guys. But my job is not to cheerlead. It is to be wrong, actually. It is. I'm so waiting to be wrong on this. I hope I'm wrong. Please give me as much abuse as humanly possible if I'm wrong on this, because that's what I want. That's the result I want. I want to be wrong and get abuse for it, because then we're safe. But
Right.
Hesher, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to be proven wrong about that. I want to read what actually Neil said in our Discord. He says, controversial opinion. Different factions of the Western military industrial complex are at war with each other. Some want war with Iran to save Israel at all costs. Some want to defeat Russia-China axis at all costs. And others want war with both. I think that's probably a piece of nuance that we are dealing with here, sort of this, the internal battle of the management factions. And that's where the Republican Party has gotten really skilled in the last couple of years. I think they saw what they were up against in 2020, obviously, and leading up to 2020. And then the 2022 midterm elections, there was supposed to be this big red wave, and it completely did not happen. And I think over that 4-year period, the Trump team and the Republican Party did a lot of scrambling to figure out how to rebrand America, how to rebrand conservatism, how to rebrand the RNC to an extent, and rebrand a lot of these former Democrat voters, to include Elon and Tulsi and so many of the people that were up there at the inauguration and in there right now, doing their part, whatever you consider that is. So, yeah, it's I don't think these desires by the various management factions are going anywhere. Put it that way.
Yeah. So listen, I'm definitely skeptic, definitely blackpilling on this. And, she was backing Bernie Sanders, who's basically a communist. Now she's MAGA in a very short space of time. Fair enough. You're allowed to have changing parties. I change parties. We all do it. But it's like what people are willing to do to get into power and stay into power. And I know that they maybe think I can change it from the inside, but the stakes are incredibly high. And it seems to me, and this is a controversial position, okay? I said this last night on the X space, Ruckus. With the Israeli lobby, total contributions to Trump, Mary Madelson, and all the rest, 250 million, roughly. That's $250 million. Elon Musk and the funds that he bundled, roughly $250 million, $250 million. Together, Musk and the Israeli lobby, $500 million. What is the price of getting a seat in the White House and turning it into a co-working space? It's $250 million. That's the price. Me as an American, I don't like that. I don't like anybody being able to put down, or any group being able to put down that kind of money and buying themselves a position in government. I have a problem with this, and as great as I love to see USAID taken to the cleaners, happy to see it. I support that effort, okay? But I do not like billionaires and the richest people in the world buying their way into government, because there is a huge potential for them accumulating such power, especially in the age of technology. Imagine all the data that Elon Musk has got his hands on, all the back doors, everything, people, all the data in the country, fueling into Palantir and whatever else the PayPal mafia are up to. And he bought his way in. He wasn't elected. He wasn't elected. Trump was elected. This Elon thing was meant to be a side hustle, and now I'm not sure who's running what, but it's a lot of power that's being accumulated. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this.
And what's their expected return on their investment? Because it can't ultimately just be the Iran thing. Obviously, you have the Israeli lobby, but again, as I said, that was going to go down whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. That's always been a thing. There's some new thing that's about to change. There is definitely a shift that is about to happen. And I'm thinking back to what Trump was talking about, cutting the military budget in half, because I had said that wrong. I'd said about the nukes, but maybe there is a way for them to be more efficient with their spending on the military defense without reducing our military defense, because we do have the technology. And who in particular has their grubby little fingers in that pie? It's all of the people that Trump has basically surrounded himself via the PayPal mafia and the Peter Thiel connection and Palantir. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, what we're witnessing, we just don't know what the ultimate answer is, that we're right in the middle of the thing, the problem, the reaction, and now we got to wait for the solution. And the solution is going to be very tech heavy. And I think that these people are going to make a killing. I think the military industrial complex is shifting to a technology industrial complex. We've moved past big pharma now. We're moving into a new thing here. And I think that as far as Iran goes, I don't see that happening. I see under Trump us pulling back from those things and instead focusing now on the China-Taiwan thing. And that could happen overnight. Like the whole thing could just change tomorrow. You know what I mean? So,
well, it looks like that could be the case, but Iran is definitely the one that is hot on the burner right now. Basil, go ahead if you have any thoughts on this.
Well, things have been upended, haven't they? Europe is absolutely running for cover. John Major, speaking today, said that he thought democracy was in danger because of Trump's new position. I welcome the fact that the pieces on the board are in motion at last. For too long, these security conferences have just been backslapping exercises, everybody heading in the same direction. Rubio Netanyahu business is utterly repulsive. Rubio actually had the cheek to say that the Middle East would be a safer place if there were more countries like Israel. I mean, he's not living on the same planet as the rest of us, But in general, I would say that, February 2025 is a more hopeful month than February 2024.
So I'm with you on that for sure, Basil. So Hesher, in addition to the tech bros, we also have this chap, Palmer Luckey, who sold his VR firm to, I think, Mark Zuckerberg. And all of a sudden, he becomes the sort of new defense guru. It's kind of a strange-looking character in that he has an epic mullet. But this is like the number one sort of military-industrial complex guy at the moment. And so he's the guy. And so he's right up there kind of, it's got this big factory. He's kind of a Musk kind of serial CEO type guy. And he's like the most sort of dominant person right now on the scene, new kind of emerging star on the scene of the military industrial complex, Palmer Luckey. And I think it's interesting. I mean, he seems like a little bit of Mr. Slapdash. There he is there. Incredible mullet. And the goatee and all that. So Hawaiian shirts. I mean, this is the new look, Hesher, of the military industrial. This is the acceptable look of the military industrial complex. That's the way I'm reading this. What do you think?
Yeah, this is an interesting one there. I remember when he sold that to Zuckerberg, I was pretty critical about that. That was quite a while ago now, but I was keenly interested in it because in a previous life, I was working on a master's degree in modeling virtual environments and simulations. So I was very keen to understand the state of VR. And this is the guy that made Oculus, right? So yeah. Oculus was one of the first, for me at least, one of the first noteworthy crowd-funded pieces of technology, and it was geared toward gamers, okay, which is what I was at the time. So for me, it was really exciting to see sort of a crowd-funded you know, something that seemed like a startup in the space of virtual reality. To me, that was a huge win. That was a great sign for technology and for freedom. And he used to talk all about how it was going to be built on an open source model. You know what I mean? There was a lot of attractive things, and a lot of people out there, gamers and other people, put money into the development of Oculus. And he promised he would not sell them out. But Mark Zuckerberg came along with a huge, bag of money, and he did exactly that. He sold it out. And if Mark Zuckerberg is truly what some people suspect he is, which is a deep state technocrat asset, there's room for speculation that there was more than just the money that was exchanged hands for that technology to be moved over to then Facebook, now Meta. And you won't find, I might be wrong about this, someone can check me, but I don't think you'll find any, consumer grade or high grade VR, backbones on GitHub or other places where you can do open source development. So, the fact that he's taken over a $22 billion government contract now, it raises some red flags. And as far as his aesthetics, you mentioned his look. I think what we're seeing is a rebranding of, not just people like Tulsi and others. I think we're seeing a like a longer term strategy of rebranding that is to do with authoritarian technocracy, or maybe just technocracy if you're less black-pilled than I am, because the people that represent, like when you go to the average person under, I don't know, 50 or 40 or something like that, and you quiz them about who politicians are, what politicians look like, they'll say, well, they're really old, I can't relate to them. Many of them are 80. They seem to be talking through a lens that doesn't make sense to me. Like, we're seeing the end of the old era of politics right now. We're seeing the end of the old era of technology, even though it still seems pretty fresh to a lot of us. And what we're not gonna be able to be governed by octogenarian, people that have never used a computer. Okay, and that's what a lot of politicians are. They're old people that have never used a computer, that pretend they know what AI is and pretend they know what social media is, and in reality, they're completely unrelatable. So we're gonna need characters like this. We're gonna need Palmer Luckies and Elon Musks, and heck, we can even throw in an octogenarian like Larry Ellison, because he looks like Mickey Rourke. He doesn't necessarily look like Mitch McConnell or something like that, but the days of senile Mitch McConnell style politicians, Nancy Pelosi style politicians, that's not going to fly. That is never going to fly with the people that are now the main voting bloc moving into the next epoch of, into the 21st century, into the age of artificial intelligence. They're not going to be able to sell us this type of transhumanist authoritarianism without characters like this guy and others. So, this is why these people are being front and center. This is why they're front and center. All these people probably have long-term political narratives that they're branding themselves on right now, and none of them are going to go away. None of them are going to go away if the population doesn't figure out that technocracy is coming, and that the old guard is doing everything in their power to make sure that they stay in power as the new technological era arrives.
That's the key, staying in power. Yeah, totally a new facelift on this, and it's gone sort of that Friday office attire in politics, and definitely social media driven, X driven. So you can see how this whole thing is taking shape. Consensus building done on social media, almost like the fake democracy is kind of in the making. It's like, oh, well, it was trending on X and got like a load of likes. there and lots of views. So we're going to go with that, because that's kind of like how Trump picks his cabinet. Like who's the most influential on social media, who's on Fox the most. That's my guy. Tammy Bruce is chief negotiator. It's like, wow.
And it's like, oh, he's got a mullet or a bunch of tattoos on his face. That's okay. Or he's got 50 kids out of wedlock with 10 wives. That's okay. You know, I'm a new conservative. So like I have all these liberal, loopholes. Like I'm not going to live my life that way. And I certainly don't want my kids to live their life that way. But my heroes live their life that way. And that's totally cool by me. You know what I mean? Like the amount of exceptions one has to make for this clown car of technocrats is jaw dropping.
I am Dark MAGA. I am Dark MAGA. So it's so comical. I don't know what to say, guys. I mean, I'm just crossing my fingers and hope that it's not too bad of a disaster and hopefully some good things happen and they don't blow up the world in the next 6 months. But look, we're going to wrap up this program. Appreciate you guys. Went a little bit overtime today, but actually before we go, I'll go to Hesher and Ruckus first. Thank you again, you guys. Thank you, Ruckus, for last night for co-hosting that epic space. Hesher, give us a shout out to our viewers here on the platforms about the Boiler Room, where we can find this program and anything else that's coming up.
All right, Boiler Room is our roundtable current events discussion that we have every Thursday night here at Alternate Current Radio. We'd love to see it in the chats. We're out there streaming live on Rumble, YouTube, Rockfin. We had been streaming on X, but I lost my blue check mark for now. So we'll be back on X when I get that back. And that's Thursday nights at some point after 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'd love to see you for the live show. If you missed any live shows or you want to check it out, go to our website, alternatecurrentradio.com. We've got support links up there if you want to support us, buy a t-shirt, whatever, buy Ruckus a coffee. We got all that for you. Sunday Wire archives up there, alternatecurrentradio.com. Thanks for having me, Patrick. Sorry I missed the space last night. You guys did an awesome job, and I'll look forward to what this week has to hold.
Yeah, well, you can listen to the audio when you're out trimming the hedges or walking the beasts around the neighborhood, terrorizing your neighbors. So Ruckus, Daily Ruckus, what's happening with your show?
Well, as I've mentioned before, just because it says it's daily doesn't mean the show is daily, so I get them out when I can. I will have a new one as soon as possible. I don't want to set a date on it. I'm intending today or tomorrow. However, tomorrow on Monday, there's going to be a lot of ruckus happening elsewhere. I'm actually going to be joining the fantastic Basil Valentine over at The Pulse, formerly known as Today's News Talk, so TNT, thepulse.today. I'll be on his show for a little while tomorrow, so make sure you tune into that. And then tomorrow evening, first for me, I'm going to actually be co-hosting Weaponized News with Sam Chaney. That's his program, Sam Chaney. Very much looking forward to that. So that's where you'll find me doing ruckus stuff outside of my own program. But my next episode that I'm working on, just so you know, it's really an epic kind of thing. Not nearly as epic as that X Space we did, which was almost 5 hours. That was crazy. But my next episode is actually going to be 12 mini episodes inside of one giant program to wrap up my 12 Days of Ruckus series that I was doing. It's called 12 Bummers Coming. So I'm making 12 shocking predictions about what to expect in the very near future. And I'm treating each segment as if it was its own individual program and rolling it all into one giant, huge thing. So I don't know when that'll be out available. Safe bet is that you can come visit alternatecurrentradio.com by Tuesday, and you'll definitely see it up there by then, because knowing me, it'll probably come out very late, either tonight or Monday. So in the meantime, you can always find me over there with Hesher on Boiler Room. And thanks for having me do the thing. And thanks for having me tomorrow, Basil. Looking forward to that.
Basil Valentine, what's happening with you?
Yeah, well, we're back, I'm glad to say, at the Pulse today. I do an hour's interview and analysis starting 7 p.m. Central European Time, 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every day. And then after an hour, I'm joined by my cohort, Pelly Niroth Taylor, for a three-way go with an additional guest. So I'm on our now Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. And Adam is one of my guests tomorrow. We're thrilled to be back. So do go over. You can watch live for free at thepulse.today.
Yeah, you gotta put it up on screen here. Hopefully we get see if we can angle that. But there it is, the pulse.today. Basil Valentine, obviously one of the greatest political minds of our generation. And he's
I'm pleased to say that I think all of us might be back there, touch wood, at some point before the end of the year, shall we say? Who knows?
okay. Well, in the meantime, there's stuff happening there. It's positive. It's good content, great analysis. Obviously, Basil is there, so you know that that's pretty much a lock with regards to the political conversation.
I've got, as well as Adam, I've got Dirk Polman joining me tomorrow, who's particularly intelligent and thoughtful analyst of German politics. We'll be looking, of course, at the upcoming elections. I've just seen a map which shows the country divided along the lines of the old border, with East Germany voting AfD and the West voting almost completely CSU. So I'll be talking about that to Dirk, and of course the fallout from Munich and the negotiations getting underway tomorrow in Riyadh. Yes.
Munich, not the terrorist attack, not the Olympics, but the security conference. But Basil Valentine, the pulse.today, just go check that out. You can see thepulse.today. That's the URL. Basil will be on there bright and early tomorrow. And so looking forward to that. We'll be chiming in, hopefully, to also talk to Basil on that program, hopefully at some point this week, with any luck.
Yes.
And
yes, certainly. You're very welcome.
So thank you, gentlemen, for a epic Sunday Wire. I think we managed to put the world almost to rights, but not quite, but pretty darn close. So quite an effort, gentlemen. Our audience very much appreciates the AI, the four minds coming together to form a powerful AI here on the Alternate Current Radio. We can outperform ChatGPT at the moment, so we're still ahead. We're still ahead of the AI. We can still do things that the AI can't. Not every show can claim such things, though. As you know. Thank you, guys. Take care, and I will see you all soon. Thank you. And that's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you very much for joining us on the Sunday Wire this week. We have hopefully something very interesting on the Midweek Wire. In fact, we will have a different guest this week on the Midweek Wire, which will be live streaming here on Wednesday on all of our usual channels. Amazing conversation last week with Freddie Ponton and Mats Nilsson on Whiskey on the Rocks. Whiskey on the Rocks, and that historic event. Unbelievable conversation. I think a very important historical report. Very proud to be able to bring that to you, and congratulations to Mats and Freddie for just doing an incredible job on that. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic episode 535 of this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program. Again, brought to you here on ACR. Really great to have you with us. It's been great. Baltic Cruising on the Love Boat. That's what was happening in Munich this week. And this will be Zelensky's final cruise, they tell us. So where he will end up next, Miami, Tuscany, London, Washington, D.C., maybe Hollywood, perhaps Switzerland. Nobody quite knows. But he definitely will not be president of Ukraine for very much longer. So things will get extremely interesting there. Look, that's all we got time for. Take care, you guys. And thank you again. All the best. We'll see you soon. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, we are running our winter fundraising drive. We're in the final stretch here. If you like what we do, if you like the content that we're producing, we need your help. We need your support going forward. So this is our winter fundraising drive. This is how we fund the operation for the next 12 months. And you can also take out a monthly membership at 21wire.tv. Just go to the donate or support button, the top of my X account. There's a donate button there under my profile, or go to 21stcenturywire.com. You'll see the donate button in the upper left-hand corner on the menu. and you can get us there and help us any way you can. Any way you can support us, it is absolutely greatly appreciated. It'll put to good use. As you can see, we're expanding our content offering, and we have a lot more content in the pipeline, which we are also working on. So in addition to the new Midweek Wire, we'll be starting a talk show. This will be sort of a professionally filmed chat show, and that will be coming out. That will be for subscribers only initially. So we'll be airing the first, I think, probably 5 episodes of that in the next couple of weeks. You'll start to see the first installments of that. So again, you have to subscribe to 21wire.tv to see those full-length episodes. So that'll be something exciting. We're just still working on the graphics and everything, so it's taken a lot longer than expected. And of course, this whole project got delayed this year because of extenuating circumstances involving myself. But we seem to be getting our footing again, thanks to your help, thanks to your support. And again, thank you every one of you who have donated and helped to support us, as well as the crypto donations. Amazing. We got a couple of Bitcoin donations, as well as a Litecoin and some of the other things that we can accept on our website. So it all goes to good use. We have a great team of part-time and volunteers, and we'll probably be getting a sub-editor soon for written content. So all of these things take resources, and we really need your support. So if you want to subscribe and become a member and help us out on a regular basis for a very, very low cost, it's greatly appreciated. But we're growing. We've been around since 2009. So that'll give you some indication that this is not a flash in the pan operation, and we have some great independent journalism and reports on our site. It's a great resource archive, and you'll have, obviously, the whole public has access to that going forward in the future. But as far as the new content, that's all coming online, and we really appreciate your support helping us make all that happen. So big thank you to everybody again. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. It's been an amazing week. Have a great week. We'll see you midweek. So take care. All the best, everybody.
Brothers and sisters, we're being divided. Don't believe what they say. Hold on to your soul. Everyone divided in an echo chamber hole, saying that the enemy doesn't have a soul.
supervised contact. They watch our every move. They examine our togetherness like we've got something to prove. I've looked behind your eyes. I've seen the sadness you hide. I've looked into your eyes. I've seen the tears that you've cried. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. In the legal arena, upset theaters are staged. She moves in circles. Her cruel games cause delays. From the questions you ask me, like why can't you come home tonight? From the moment you hold me, it's the shortest hour of my life. No, I won't get used to these chains. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling. I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will know. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling. I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will flow. Restricted freedoms. They say I've got to be careful with what I say. Their conspiracy of silence. They think the truth will lead you astray. They say that they're here for you, but they never listen to what you say. They've built walls between us. I will walk through walls to break these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains.